Obviously, you met Graham Nash when you were just 6 years old. You've been friends ever since, and you've combined again on your new album, I'll Never Forget, which is due
Yeah.
for release on BMG on April 7th. Now, we've got our first taste of the record on the track Buddy's Back, and it's you and Graham, and you're back together harmonizing as well for the first time in decades. So let's start here. I mean, talk to me about this song and how all this came together.
Graham and I have been trying to get back together, or I have been trying to get back together with Graham for a long, long time. Whenever we meet, or we weren't used to meet in the past, it was, someday we better do something together. This is after the 1984 thing that we did with him.
Yeah.
And there was just one day I was asked to give him a presentation, a lifetime achievement presentation in London, but I did it secretly, and I hadn't seen him for years. So when it did happen, it was I was in the gods, of course, in the theatre, and then they took me down to the side of the stage, and then they introduced me to go on to present this to Graham. Graham was in the audience, and he obviously didn't know. So I did my little spiel about how wonderful it was to have a friend like Graham Nash. And he came up and he gave me a big hug. And he said, "It's nice to see you again, Al. It's nice being together." And I think it was like we touched emotionally and all that, it was really, really wild. But after that, I saw him quite a lot. I used to meet him in London at his hotel. And he was very interested in the album that I did, Resurgence,
Yep.
which is the album that I did before. So I went down, we had a chat, and I let him listen to it. And he said, "Hey, that sounds really great, wonderful." Not saying anything else, So I thought, okay, he likes the album. That's good enough. That's one step forward. So after the next, couple of years, what happened was that I got hold of Graham again. I says, "Look, I've got this song. Do you fancy doing it? Doing an album?" And he said, "Yes, send me the song," which I did, and it's one that's on the album, and it's called "I'll Never Forget." And I wrote the song lyrically trying to say that this might happen, it might not happen. Like here we are finding ourselves in a peculiar situation, and wondering whether what we're trying to do is going to happen, and what will it be like if it does happen. Yeah. And what will happen after that if it does this and if it does that. So it was about a hesitation song about, are we going to do it or aren't we going to do it? So I sent it to Graham and he liked it. And he said, "Let's do it." So that was the actual start of doing the album. Obviously, everything else had happened around the world, like COVID. And we were still, no one's able to travel and do anything. It's a shame, really, because I would have liked to have written with Graham, with the album, but we couldn't do that. So we got that one song under our belt, and I sent him another couple of stuff which he liked. And then halfway through, he said, "Alan," he said, "I think this should be your solo album." He said, "Because you're really good voice now." He said, "This is really good that you're doing this, and I will put all the harmonies on." And I said to him, "Well, you got to write something, about it." And he said, "Don't worry, yes, I'll write a song." And he came up with Buddy's Back. And what that actually says in 2.5 minutes was the complete start of our love with Buddy Holly, taking it right through, going through, like, even looking in a mirror, pretending to be them, to the part where it led us to call ourselves right at the end Buddy Holly, but having him in the beginning of our life musically, and actually calling the group the Hollies after that. And he's done a wonderful job. He sent me the song and he says, "You do what you think right with it." So with my producer, we fiddled about it, and made just a little bit more reference to Buddy Holly with the drum sound and everything like that. And I sent that back to him. I said, "What do you think?" He says, "That's going to sound great on the album." So that's what we did, and that's how we planned the album, and that's how we recorded it. With me sort of doing my demo of the song, and then me sending my demo down to my producer, and my producer throwing my demo away, really, but put what he thought was, kept a few guitar licks here and there, but then started working on the song. And I was able to actually go down at that particular time, going out COVID-free, etc. So we worked on the backing tracks and then put my vocal on. Some of my vocals I did up here and just sent them down. And then we sent that finished thing over to Graham, and then he did his harmonies over there in his studios with Todd Caldwell, who is his co-producer. And then he sent it back and says, "How's that?" And I said, "Great, but maybe you can double that harmony up." So I made him work, and that was it. And that's how I went along with the tracks. And most of the tracks can be, you can hear the involvement of Graham in most of the lyrics. There's only a few where you don't, but I do refer to Graham mainly when I wrote the songs, listening to what I sing and what his harmony would sound with my singing. So that was for me, that was the main aim of getting that sound back.
Yeah.
And I think we actually did it.
Yeah.
And everybody I played it to really like it, especially that, when they've not heard anything like that from us for a long, long time, they instantly say, "There it is. That's the sound of the Hollies." And that's what I was trying to achieve. And I think it worked.
Absolutely, absolutely, indeed. It sounds fantastic. Like I said, with the harmonizing on there, it's a catchy little number as well. So, what can we expect from the rest of the album when it comes?
Well, there are sad songs. There are funny songs. There's a song about the world situation.
How to avoid.
Yeah, I don't like political things, but I do. I'm not a guy that would go out on a march. I'm too old for this to do that anyway. So it's a bit late for me to say that. But I do think that the world's in a funny place. There's a lot of things going on which shouldn't be happening, as we all know. And it was actually a song that I did a song on the last album called "The Door Is Slowly Closing," which is actually saying you better watch out because there's going to be a lot of things happening that you thought would never happen. And just recently that's come true. And not that I'm trying to be, somebody who could read the future or anything like that. Quite obvious, everybody, when you look at nature around you, it's quite obvious. And I did have lyrics for this particular song for quite a while, so I put it to music, and it's called "You Need Someone to Save You," and it's about what's happening in nature. Because you can see it every night now when you look on television, there's always something that's happening somewhere else in the world, which is devastation. And that's not good news. So I just thought that I'd put my two pennies in on how I feel. There must be something that everybody can do, or there must be someone who could bring people together. Yeah, but everybody keeps sticking the finger in, like Putin and people like that, they keep stopping, what we need to do. That's what that song's about. I wrote a love song for my wife. We'll be married 60 years next year. And she was the original Jennifer Eccles. It's actually a song that I think that everybody can relate to, because I think it's having a person in your life for so long that the presence of this particular person makes life worth living. Yep. And I think that there's thousands and thousands of people I know on the face of the earth that know what the actual word love means. So there's that one. That's my own personal one, and there's things of that way lyrically. Yeah.
Wonderful. So, Alan, Nostradamus, is there a favorite track of yours on the album? I like to put people on the spot and ask them, is there one in particular that stands out to you?
Nostradamus.
Yeah, predicting the future.
Well, that's the one. That's the one. I've not. Yeah, he's made a few right things, hasn't he? But I hope that he's wrong. About maybe. I do wish. And pray for every night for the willingness of people to stop doing the wrong thing and do the right thing. There's not much I can do about it. I'm only a single person, so the only thing that I can do is just say how I feel about things. There's only that one track on the album. I always stay, as I said to Graham when we first started it. I know he's very political in the way that he writes, And I said, I don't want to do any political songs whatsoever. So, I know he writes great songs, but, there was one song that he sent me called Golden Idol, which was, you have to get into the lyrics to find out what it actually means. But in the end, I got into it, and it was heavily political. And I was saying, well, that's one song that I can't really get involved in because it's an American, and you can't start making points about how Americans are running their country. So I stay away from all that sort of stuff, as I do here as well. So, but the album went well. We had fun even though we weren't together. We had fun doing FaceTime and things like that. I actually got Graham when I actually said something that he remembered from the past. He answered me actually into his Mancunian type way of voice, and I said, there you are, So that relationship, we got back in a small way. He hasn't forgotten his roots as well as I haven't forgotten my roots, So we don't see each other enough. New York's not too far. Maybe I'm coming over to New York and maybe do something over there.
Absolutely, indeed. No, it was famous that you took a step out of music, didn't you? For was it 30 years or so, or 20 years? What is it? Because of your poor wife had cancer a number of times, and you came back, like you said, you had Resurgence came out a couple of years ago, and this album now. So you're enjoying being back in the music sphere and recording and putting things out again.
It's very unexpected. I left the Hollies in the end of 1999 for the reason that you quite rightly said. But also, I wasn't hitting the right notes, the high notes, which they were a killer to sing. Like for the length of time that I was actually doing The Air That I Breathe and He and Heavy and all the other high notes that you have to hit to make it worthwhile, you're doing it. It was getting too much for me in the end, doing 40 years of that stuff. It took its toll. And I had words with Tony and Bobby, and what they wanted to do actually was they didn't think that I was able to put on a show, and quite rightly they were. I wasn't able to do what I could do 20 years before, or even 10 years before, and that happens to a lot of people in no matter what job you're in.
Of course,
I mean, you have a car and you're a lorry driver, you can give up, so. That and Jenny getting cancer again, I said, well, okay, that's it. I can't carry on. So here I go. What's going to happen from now on? But the thing that was what was going to happen was that Jenny and I had to say to ourselves, we don't know what's going to happen in maybe tomorrow or in a year or whatever. We didn't have any idea of how or if she was ever going to be along for that long. So, we decided, well, if we're going to do this, let's go somewhere where we can escape to, where we know we're going to be happy and the sun's going to shine. So I bought a house in Hilton Head, which is in South Carolina, because a doctor friend had taken me there before, and we both fell in love with it. So we bought a ranch house in South Carolina, and we went there for 3 months at a time, and we had a wonderful 6 years there. And after the 6 years, you say to it, well, why are we doing this now? What's happened? We're both enjoying life. Fortunately for us, our children needed us back home more than just 6 months a year. So we decided to pull up sticks and come back and spend. We were actually spending more time with the family in between going over there, but then it was down to my son Toby and my daughter Piper decided to have children. So grandchildren came along, and it was brilliant looking after them in their younger age. I mean, my eldest two are now, Sam, and now we've got two 15-year-olds, which have become a part of our life, because living in a not in a bubble, we have done since COVID, but living together and not only we're becoming friends, and it's great, it's wonderful. But so after that, I had no intention of doing music. Only the thing that I did with Graham when I went down to the Albert Hall to collect my Buddy Holly Education Foundation guitar, which was great because, you know, Phil Everly and I got ours for life. Nobody else did.
Ah.
So, you know, that was good. And actually, Graham forcing me to go on stage and sing Bus Stop for a long, long time. And then seeing him at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you know, which he said, Alan, you got to come over. You know, you say you can't sing, but I'll bet you can when you get over here, because it overtakes you. You know, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it really does. It's a shame that Tony and Bobby couldn't make it, but they wanted to work instead of doing something which I thought they should have done. Because, you know, not everybody gets into the Rock and Roll. I think Graham got in twice, so might even get in a third time. You never know. But it was a wonderful experience. It was great. Met a lot of people, and it gave me just that little bit more confidence in my life, really. You know, because when you're living with a thing that you know, all those great songs that you sang, and even now, when sometimes you go on television and the clip comes up on YouTube, and here's this young guy singing "He Ain't Heavy," and they're going, "Oh, Frankie." You know, and I look back on that and go, wow, you know, I was blessed, fantastic, lovely. But to relate to that now is that when we were sort of got used to our life as it is, I mean, I got ill with prostate cancer. And it's another one of those things where you have to wait 5 years and you have to go through all what you have to have done for that type of thing. And your attitude towards life changes. Yeah. So this didn't actually start me writing lyrics, but it did in a way. I was just up in this room where I am now, and I started writing lyrics, and I wrote a poem, and it sounded pretty good to me. I was quite surprised where it came from. You know, it came quite quickly, and my wife read it, and then a few other people read it. And they says, well, why don't you put it to music? I said, well, first of all, I don't know how to do that because I was a singer. Yeah. And then again, I can't sing. I kept telling myself, you see, that I couldn't sing. And they said, well, why don't you try singing it lower? Which I never thought, you know, that why do I do that? So I did. I put music to that particular song. And I sent it to a few friends, and they came back with, wow, you should do more. And over a period of going through my cancer treatment and everything, I compiled enough songs that, you know, GarageBand, I didn't even know what it was for. And because there was no need for me to use it, you know. But with my son, Toby, who teaches performing arts and music, he said to me, there's a thing on you. He says, you've seen me use it. And you said, what are those squiggly lines that go on? He says, well, that's how you do it. So he came up and he loaded my machine and actually taught me how to get the tracks up and to actually press the right button at the right time. I had to learn by making mistakes. Yeah. You know, losing a track and going, oh my God, let the track go. And then it's just a simple thing that you can go edit. And you can actually, whatever you've whacked, you can bring it back. So you learn all these things. So I started becoming a producer of music, doing it that way. And in that time, I'd sent there's a guy in America, in Los Angeles, Saul Davis, and his wife, Carla Olson, who's got a group called the Textiles, and they're both wonderful people. And they've both been trying to get me to do an album for 20 years. And each time he said, don't ask me, I can't sing. Well, because I know him, they're both in the business, and they know what is good and what is bad. I sent my songs over, you know, just to get some sort of reaction, and the reaction was, "What are you doing? Why don't you do this properly? You know, get it? Why aren't you doing it?" I'm going, "Well, I don't really, don't want to do that. It's just something I'm having fun." And I think that he actually sent these tracks to, he knows all the people there, and he sent it to Hartwig Masso from BMG. And what happened, I get a phone call from BMG, and Hartwig is saying, "Hello, Alan, how are you?" And I thought, well, I'm very well. What can I do for you? So I want to put your album out. So you see, Francis and I had got it to a part, like where we thought people told us the demos were good. So Francis Haynes, who was my producer, and he was in the Hollies for a while, and we're great friends. We go right the way back, and he used to do demos for me, and they were brilliant demos. And so I thought, I need that guy. So he came up one day, and I played him stuff, and he says, "Yeah, we can do that." And he brought them up to another level. You know,
Yeah.
Man was out the window, but you know, my ideas were there only done properly. And we got to the point where we finished the album, and we gave it to BMG, and it was put out, and everybody said, "Wow, where did that come from? We thought you couldn't sing. Why haven't you been doing it for the last 20 years? Why aren't you on the road?" All these type of things, you know, which obviously I couldn't do. And it gave me a lot of confidence within myself. I did a lot of radios. I did a lot of traveling, you know. And as I say, it was accepted. And you know, people said, "Great, you know, oh, Allan's back." I wasn't back, you know, but I'd made an album, and that was it. So you know, that was 3 years ago now, and maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So we went through COVID. I got the good news that everything's clear. That was last year.
Fantastic.
And while that was happening in the beginning, I started my second album, you know, just writing stuff. And that's where the track I'll Never Forget came in, and meeting Graham again, and then actually getting to the point where he says, "I want to be involved in your album, but I would do the harmonies, and you write the songs and I'll write a song." And that's how it is now. Again, the same questions are thrown at me about, well, what are you going to do about it now? I have no idea. I know that the Buddy song it represents what our thoughts back in, you know, the late, when was it? It was about the late 60s. No, what am I talking about? The late 50s, early rock and roll, you know, with Eddie Cochran and all those people, you know, Gene Vincent, Little Richard. I'm a rock and roll guy myself, but I do have the way to sing any kind of song, you know, which is really good. So pleased that I was able to give Here and Heavy the way that I sang it was the right way to sing it. As with The Air That I Breathe, what two fantastic songs which were presented to the Hollies, which actually changed people's thoughts about what the Hollies are, you know. And I thought, One Cool Woman, when that made up to America. Number two, I wasn't with the band. I couldn't go over there and promote it. But okay, it made number two. That made me very, very happy, even though I wasn't with the band. All those things were happening within my life to get me to a point now where I've written it. I think it's a good album with Graham singing all the harmonies, sounding like we always used to sing, just that slightly lower voice. But yeah. So people are saying now, you know, well, when you start your third album.
So when are you starting your third album?
Well, I've got to take a contract with BMG, so you know, I think I'll go till about the day I drop. I don't know. Who knows? You know, I've always lived my life a day at a time. You know, and it's been like that since a certain day in the 60s when I knew it was about time I stopped drinking, and that was a great day that I did that. I woke up, you know, and the world changed for me. So yeah, that's one of the points in my life as well that actually changed my life, changed a lot of people's lives within my family.
Yeah.
And I know I just feel that, you know, I'm doing something which, you know, someone wants, someone will listen to it. You know, I do have a fan base.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's called the Allan Clarke Appreciation Society. I like the appreciation bit of it, you know. But there's other sites out there as well. So someone is enjoying my music because they're buying it, which is great. Whether I go out and do anything with that in the new year, it all depends on how strong my voice would be to be able to put maybe a half an hour together or 3/4 of an hour together and try to do. I think it's possible. You know, there's wonderful things you can do on stage now. I see other guys going out there, you know, and they sound pretty good when they shouldn't be sounding pretty good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm quite honest about this. If I could get some help, you know, to make it half decent, and and make it not stressful. Because stress is the worst thing. You don't want that in your life, and I never would want that in my life again. That would be a possibility, but that would have to be getting this guy involved, that involved, and then getting it together and seeing if it would work. If it worked, then it'd be a yes. But if it didn't, then obviously there wouldn't be any, there wouldn't be any show.
Absolutely.
But I think playing the Albert Hall for one night, that would be great. Just
absolutely. Yeah.
Great. And then that would be my farewell to singing. Maybe not just recording, but that would be my farewell to singing.
And what a farewell it would be indeed. I mean, this new album, I'll never forget. It's available to pre-order now, so I recommend everyone gets out there and checks out Alan's website and social medias and all that sort of stuff. There's links everywhere. You can get the pre-order so you can get it when it comes out on April 7th. Now,